an alien girl saw a human boy being attacked. What she did next changed everything. My name is Vesa, and I was born on Thren, a world where strength is everything. From the moment a child can walk, they are taught to measure others. How fast can you move? How hard can you hit? How much can you carry? On Thren, weakness is not just disliked, it is dangerous. If you are weak, someone will decide you are not worth protecting. That is why, when my family moved to the trade station called Corval Reach, I already knew what I thought about humans. Everyone on Thren said the same thing. Humans were soft. Humans were slow. Humans had no claws, no natural armor, no special strength in their bodies. They built machines to do what our bodies could do on their own. To me, that was proof of weakness, not cleverness. Corval Reach was a strange place. It was a station built above a quiet mining planet, and species from a dozen worlds lived there together. There were rules to keep the peace, but the rules did not erase the way people looked at each other. My people walked with their shoulders back, taking up space without asking. The humans usually walked quickly, heads down, trying not to be noticed. I did not think about why. I simply assumed it was because they knew they were weaker. I remember the first time I really looked at a human. It was in the market corridor, the wide hallway lined with stalls selling fruit, tools, and cloth from 100 different worlds. I was walking with two girls from my class, Threll and Ober, when we saw him. He was a boy, maybe my age, sitting on a crate near a stall that sold old machine parts. He was fixing something small, a broken fan or a light, I could not tell. His hands moved carefully, like he had done this many times before. He did not look up at anyone. He did not seem to care who was watching. Threll laughed under her breath. "Look how careful he is," she said. "Like a little bug trying to build a nest." I laughed too, though I am not proud of it now. It felt normal to laugh. It felt normal to believe we were better. We walked on, and I forgot about him. Or I thought I had. 3 days later, I saw him again. This time, I was alone, cutting through a narrow side corridor on my way back from a lesson. That was when I saw the trouble. 3 older boys had surrounded him. I recognized 2 of them from my own class, bigger and louder than most, the kind of boys who liked to remind everyone they were strong. The third was a stranger to me, from a species with thick gray skin and heavy shoulders. They were not being kind. I could see it in the way they stood, close and tall, blocking every direction he might run. I stopped at the corner, half hidden behind a support pillar. I told myself I was just curious. I told myself this was not my problem. The human boy did not shout. He did not beg. He stood very still, his hands loose at his sides, watching them the way you might watch weather clouds gathering before a storm. I expected him to shake. I expected him to look small. He did not. One of the boys from my class, Doran, shoved him hard in the chest. "This is our corridor," Doran said. "You don't belong here." The human boy took a small step back to catch his balance, but his face did not change. "I was just passing through," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm, I thought. Almost strange for someone who should have been afraid. Doran shoved him again, harder this time. The gray-skinned boy grabbed the human's arm, twisting it slightly, clearly trying to make him flinch, trying to make him cry out. He didn't. Instead, something happened that I did not expect. The human boy moved, not wildly, not in panic, but with a kind of quiet control I had never seen before, not even in our best combat students. He turned his arm in a way that broke the grip without hurting the other boy, stepping sideways so that Doran's next shove missed him completely. It was like watching water move around a rock instead of crashing into it. The 3 boys stumbled, confused. For a moment, none of them understood what had happened. Neither did I. "Get him!" the gray-skinned boy shouted, and this time, all 3 came at once. I should have walked away right then. Instead, I found myself stepping closer, my heart pounding, watching as the human boy defended himself. He did not throw a single hit that looked like it was meant to cause real harm. He blocked. He redirected. He used their own weight and speed against them, letting them stumble into each other, letting them trip over crates and packing boxes that lined the corridor. It was almost like watching a dance, except one side did not know the steps. Within moments, all 3 boys were on the ground, dazed, tangled in shipping straps and spilled cargo. None of them seriously hurt, but all of them clearly beaten. Not beaten by force, beaten by skill. I stood there, frozen, staring at him. He was breathing a little harder now, but his face was still calm. He looked at the three boys on the ground, and I expected him to smirk, to say something proud, the way any of us would have. He didn't. "You should go," he said quietly, "before someone sees this, and it becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be." Doran scrambled up first, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "This isn't over," he growled. But even as he said it, I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. The gray-skinned boy pulled at Doran's arm, clearly wanting to leave before anyone official arrived. Within seconds, all three of them had hurried away down the corridor, leaving the human boy alone again. Alone, except for me. He noticed me then. I do not know how long he had known I was there, but his eyes found mine across the corridor, calm and steady, without anger, without fear. My mind raced with questions I could not organize into words. Instead, without thinking, I found myself walking toward him. "You could have hurt them," I said, which was a strange thing to say, since he clearly had not. "I didn't want to," he said simply. He crouched down and picked up the fan he had been fixing earlier, checking it for damage. They were angry, not evil. There's a difference. I did not understand what he meant. On Thren, anger and evil were often the same thing, or at least treated the same way. If someone attacked you, you answered with force, and the strongest voice always won. "But they attacked you," I said. "You could have really hurt them. You clearly know how." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his expression that was not calm. It was tired. "Knowing how to hurt someone doesn't mean you have to," he said. "Where I come from, we learned that the hard way. A lot of people got hurt because someone decided that strength meant using it all the time." I did not have a response to that. On Thren, we were taught the opposite. Strength that was not used was strength wasted. "My name is Theo," he said, standing up and brushing dust off his clothes. "Vesa," I answered, before I could think about whether I should. "Thanks for staying," Theo said. "Most people just walk past." I almost told him that I had almost done the same thing. I almost told him that I had laughed at him 3 days earlier without even meaning to. Instead, I said nothing, and we stood there for a moment in silence that was not uncomfortable, just quiet. "Why were they after you?" I finally asked. Theo shrugged. "Some people don't like sharing space with someone different. It happens more than you'd think." He said it without bitterness, like a simple fact about weather or gravity. Something he had accepted long ago, rather than something that still hurt him. I thought about my own people, about how we were taught to measure others by size and speed and force, about how easily I had accepted that humans were beneath us without ever really looking at one closely. I felt something uncomfortable settle in my chest, something I did not have a word for yet. "I didn't know humans could fight like that," I admitted. Theo smiled slightly, the first real smile I had seen from him. "Most people don't. We're not as fragile as we look. We just try not to prove it unless we have to." Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking for him in the market corridor, and more often than not, I found him there, fixing something, talking quietly with the old vendor who sold machine parts, or simply reading on his crate during quiet hours. We began to talk more, small conversations that grew longer over time. He told me about Earth, about how humans had once fought wars among themselves that nearly destroyed everything they had built, and how that history had taught many of them to value restraint over domination, not because they were weak, but because they had seen what unchecked strength could do. I told him about Thren, about the pride we took in strength, and slowly, as I spoke, I began to hear how hollow some of it sounded out loud, especially compared to what I had witnessed in that corridor. One day, Threll saw us talking and pulled me aside. "Why do you spend time with him?" she asked, her voice edged with the same disdain I used to share. "He's human. He's nothing." I thought about the corridor, about the 3 boys on the ground, defeated not by force, but by patience and control. I thought about how calm Theo had been, how he had chosen mercy when he did not have to. "He's not nothing," I said. "He's stronger than any of us. He just doesn't need to prove it by hurting people." Threll did not understand, and for a while, neither did some of my other classmates. But something had changed in me that I could not undo. I began to notice things I had ignored before. I noticed how the human traders on the station were often underestimated in negotiations, only to outthink their opponents with patience and careful planning. I noticed how human workers on the mining crews below were often given the most dangerous jobs, yet rarely complained, simply finding smarter, safer ways to do them. I began to understand that strength was not only about what you could do to someone, it was also about what you chose not to do, even when you could. Months later, when tensions rose on the station between two trading families, and it looked as though a fight might break out in the main hall, it was Theo who stepped between them, speaking calmly, offering a compromise that neither side had thought of. I stood beside him that day, no longer a bystander, but someone who understood what he was trying to do. The families listened, not because he was the strongest person in the room, but because he was the calmest, and in a room full of shouting, calm was its own kind of power. I think back often to that day in the corridor, to the moment I almost walked past a human boy being attacked because I believed he did not matter. If I had turned away, I never would have learned what he taught me. I never would have understood that real strength does not need to announce itself, that mercy is not the same as weakness, and that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who could do the most damage, and chooses not to. Theo changed how I saw humans, and more than that, he changed how I saw strength itself. Now when I look at someone, alien or human, I do not measure them by size or by how many people fear them. I measure them by what they choose to do when no one is forcing their hand. That day in the corridor did not just change how I saw one human boy, it changed everything I thought I knew.